This is the CreaseCast.
So on our last episode, we were like, or I realized at some point in the middle of that recording that the Tampa Bay Lightning had somehow won 2 Stanley Cups in less than 10 months.
Yeah.
And so here we are, episode 135, our final episode of
Ever.
the 2020.
Yeah. We got canceled, guys. This is it. We're never coming back. No, just kidding.
The Vancast was leaving, and we were like, well, we're not going to fill that void, so we're out too.
Yeah, we're going out on top.
But
for that dead last season.
Going out on 22nd, baby.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of thinking, like, man, our show started like midway through the season, not midway through the season, but like pretty much like a week into the season or whatever it was. That feels like a year ago.
Oh yeah. I think we started, I think, right at the beginning of January. So just before the season was really about to get underway. Like I think you and I started doing shows right in the middle of like that really short training camp,
right?
Which normally would be like game 42. Like normally that's halfway through a regular year, which we'll get next year. But it was so condensed and just lightning quick, going through games, going through stories, going through everything else, that even though like every next year we're going to be doing this in the same way, I'll bet you it's going to feel a lot
it'll feel a lot slower, right? It won't feel so jam-packed because in the midst of what felt like a very rushed season full of stuff going on, there was also a month-long pause, or not a month-long, I guess there was a month-long pause for me following the AHL, but for the NHL, there was the COVID hiatus of, 2 weeks or whatever it was, which felt like an eternity because the league was going on, and because there was so much going on in that, it just like felt like the whole season came to this weird stop and go for the Canucks, and just watching the Canucks, because all you could talk about on our show was, well, they're still sick, can't play yet. That's it. NHL's kind of crazy, huh?
Boy, hockey be crazy. Yeah, that was a lot of this here. It was just so much happened in such a short amount of time. And it feels like we never even got like a let up, even when there was that stuff going on. It never let up.
No.
There was always something. And a great challenge and a great test of our abilities to keep up on everything going on. I'm sure we missed a story here.
We definitely did.
But
just
overall,
a couple here and there.
Here we are coming into this, today we were almost, I don't know if we were struggling necessarily to find anything to talk about. There's still quite a few things.
There's still some things to talk about, but it definitely felt like, I think you and I were both on the same page. Like we were really hoping for news on a Hughes or Pettersson extension, so that would at least kind of close out like the chapter on this Canucks season, which was just completely dreadful, and at least would because even after free agency day, all the signings that they did to boost their team and prepare the AHL team as well, like it still feels like we're still living in the 2020-2021 season. We're not like looking ahead yet because they haven't quite got the most important things squared away yet, which is like the wildest thing to me, is that it's beginning of August, it's August 3rd, and training camp starts in like a month and a half. And all reports coming out right now are just like, yeah, this might, cut into training camp a bit. They might not show up for the first half. And you're like, if there's one team that cannot afford to have its 2-star players holding out for better contracts, it is Pettersson and Hughes with the Vancouver Canucks. They desperately need to find a way to get these two signed before training camp, because that's all anyone is ever going to talk about. And that's all anyone's going to be able to talk about during this summer too, which is what do they sign for? Just to put you on the spot here, what do you think?
Oh God,
what do you think's going to happen here? So, because obviously outside of Pettersson and Hughes, there is Jason Dickinson, who they also need to sign.
Who I believe is going to arbitration now. So that's
so he'll he'll probably cost, less than 3, maybe a bit more than 2, which is whatever, but that still then leaves you with $11 million to sign your 2 cornerstone pieces. Yeah. So assuming that Jason Dickinson gets a decent deal, let's say $2.5 million. Right. So the Canucks have an 11.5 to sign those 2. What do you think they're going to sign for? Because at this point, they have to be short term, especially with only 11.5 available.
Well, they have to be short term with Pettersson for sure. With Hughes,
I think they have to be for both.
So here's the thing that I actually didn't remember about the contract. I think last week when we talked about it, Hughes is not eligible for an offer sheet, right?
Correct.
So he can't. So the Canucks don't have to necessarily worry about someone else swooping in.
Yeah.
That being
Pettersson,
said,
yes.
If you've looked at the defensive market in the last free agency, it's insanity. So and Makar hasn't helped that, with his getting that massive contract of his. Miro Heiskanen, same thing. You have to give Quinn Hughes all the money right now. It is so much more beneficial right now to give him I don't know. I mean, ideally, you just go, here's a blank check. Yeah. Give us take whatever you want for 8 years. And
whatever gets you here for 8 years, please sign it.
We're down. Yeah. Like we'll make it happen. But they can't really afford to do that this time around. So I think you're going to see them go for I think Makar got 8x8, if I remember correctly. That's what you should be looking at if you're Vancouver. You need to give max amount of term on this 100%. I think Cam Robinson was the guy who put it best, where that you get punished later on if you don't sign your big young defenseman early. If you don't give them full term early, it's going to come back to bite you the second time around. Yeah. So you're much better off making it happen now and giving them as much as you can possible. Now, with Pettersson, you can afford to be, I don't want to say stingy is not the right word, but you can afford to be a little bit more okay, we're going to go for a short term, still keep you under RFA contract term for the next one, and then we'll give you your big payday. And that way you won't be dealing with both of their max deals at the exact same time. It does delay when you get Pettersson's done, but at the very least, maybe you're not so worried about, say, having to negotiate 2 of the biggest contracts in franchise history at the exact same time.
Which they've been struggling to do for the last
long time.
They knew
this was coming.
I was gonna finish that with a long time, but then I was like, have they really been working on these contracts? Because at the start of the season, all the talk was, the cap troubles the team was under. Obviously, they lost Foley and Stetcher, Markstrom, Tanev, all these guys because of money issues. And a lot of people at the time were like, oh, it's because they're posturing for having to re-sign Pettersson and Hughes. And then they would ask Jim Benning, so what's the status of the contract talks right now? And the patented line, oh, we got tons of time to work it out. And then you didn't hear about it at all for the rest of the season until the season started going to hell. And then we got the ran out of time talk with Tyler Toffoli. We got the living day-to-day stuff. And then here we are, August 3rd, after free agency day. Neither are signed. And we're, Canucks fans are expected to
buy season tickets.
Expected to buy season tickets and trust that this group is going to sign them to deals that sets the team up for the future. Because realistically, what you would want to do is you would want the confidence to sign Pettersson to a bridge deal, Hughes to a bridge deal, and then go really long for a shit ton of money when they come out of those bridges so that you have this dynamic core locked up. Exactly what Tampa did, right? They had Braden Point on his bridge deal, and then even though their contract or their cap situation is a complete shit show, they still managed to lock him up to a 8-year, $9.5 million contract after his bridge is over with. Do you really think fans should trust this management group to be firstly sign Pettersson and Hughes to their bridges that would take them to the next deal, but at the same time be prepared for the next contract that's going to have to go to Brock Besser? because that's negotiation number 2. Once these 2 massive ones are done, figuring out your cap situation with those 2 signed to their bridge deals, and then signing the most important deal, or trading them away, as it's been rumored every single summer for the last
it's like
4
Jacob
years
Russ with Boston. Like it's
always coming. The talk is coming.
He is Keith Ballard, Mason Raymond, and a second embodied. That for some reason, and I'm not saying that it should be, because I think Brock Besser is an important part of your team.
He's gonna cost him. He's gonna cost the team a lot more money too, because if last season, I think we talked about this a lot in our first few episodes and just the season in general. He was legitimately their second or third best forward on the entire season.
He was their best.
It was basically him and you could definitely argue him or Hoeklander, and I think Horvat was the one that won the team MVP for forwards. But
which was kind of
I think you and I were on the same page of I feel like Besser was the only reason they were really having a chance, because Pettersson didn't find his groove for the first month of the year.
Yeah, Besser single-handedly won them quite a few games. There are multiple games in there and I think the reason why he didn't win team MVP is when he did that, he did it kind of quietly. It was a very quiet,
he just casually had a point per game basically for 10 games or whatever it was.
He was exceptional. He was better than I think any of us, including us on this show, gave him credit for. I think Demko obviously gets a lot of attention from me, because I'm going to always talk about the goaltending and how it's doing, especially if it's doing well. And maybe that came at a cost of not talking enough about what Brock Besser did and what he was capable of doing on such a nightly basis for them. And I guess it comes down to the fact of you'll give Hughes, you'll lock up Hughes this off season. You maybe get Pettersson on the bridge, but then what do you do? Then what do you do about Besser? Because frankly, there's not a lot of money coming off your books for a while.
With those trades, the offseason moves, they've committed more money to longer term deals with elite players like Tucker Poolman
and Oliver Ekman-Larsson being the big one there. As we mentioned before with Poolman, people, I don't know if you've been seeing, but some analytics people have been using Tucker Poolman as a currency and have been going this guy signed for 0.8 Tucker Pullmans, using,
because that's how bad the deal is.
That's so bad. It's a bad contract, but again, the $2.5 million, as far as the cap concerns go, is still more manageable than 7.2 for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Hoping that he does not become that he is better than a third pairing defenseman next year, him and Tyler Myers. And I get why Tucker Poolman is kind of the main concern right now. But I just look at next year, and I'm looking at next season. And again, maybe some people get mad at me for looking not only past the season that hasn't happened yet, but the season after, the off season after this season. When we're into a season, when we're having this exact conversation again in a year after season 3 of the CreaseCast, where we're what are they going to do about Brock Besser?
Yeah, how are they going to
$8 million?
I know, they're going to have to find some perfect deal where they're hey, we'll give you 5 years, a no move clause, but it's got to be a $5 million AAV.
They have to do what Vegas did, where they go, okay, we're going to take a huge loss here, trade away. We're going to handshake on a contract and then trade as much out as we can to give you that money, so we can give you that money like they did with Pietrangelo. So, which is the way they should do it. Frankly, that's the correct way to manage one of those big contracts. But
you just see the money that they view as worth spending too. They didn't see a problem with signing Myers to a $6 million contract. They didn't see a problem with acquiring Ekman-Larsson at a 7 point whatever hit.
They lack the foresight to see it coming. To see that, hey, this is going to drastically affect us, and more importantly, they're doing the exact opposite sometimes of what they should be, where they're giving the money, they're giving the full amount of money in term to pay for depth guys, for certain depth guys, and then trying to nickel and dime with your stars,
the ones that actually
move the needle. Actually make you a playoff team, which is completely backwards, backwards thinking.
like speaking of looking 2 seasons down the road, when JT Miller and Bo Horvat are needing extensions, or you got to figure out what you're going to do with them. Like JT Miller is going to be 32, he's going to be UFA. Like
Horvat's going to be 28.
Yeah, like you need to figure out, like, do you want to extend JT Miller? Do you think you can still like squeeze a little juice out of that lemon?
You're already coming up real quick on the end of your or not in the end, I should say. That's a little over dramatic. You're coming close to the crossroads point for your era. I think that's the better way of putting it. Like,
fair.
Because you could potentially see Bo Horvat in 2 years. Potentially, Bo Horvat and JT Miller could both walk into UFA and decide they're not going to re-sign in Vancouver, move on.
Especially if they keep losing.
JT Miller, you might not necessarily consider part of that, but Bo Horvat, you certainly do.
Yeah.
So now, so in a way, those are the players you have to impress the most, because Bo being the key one here, where if you lose him, you're in a lot of trouble. You're not, well, it's not irreplaceable, but it's not good.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't bode well for you. Like, you're not going to find.
It's a damning statement of your organization if you lose your captain because you fucked up the cap so badly.
And let's say he does walk in free agency, the odds on you finding a replacement for him in free agency is not good. Your odds of finding someone as good as Bo Horvat, whether or not you feel he's as good as he is. I think a lot of us believe he's pretty darn good. He's a pretty good player, but the odds on you finding anyone to replicate his ability is slim to none outside of him. So you need to make it clear to this guy who you named captain only 2 years ago that it's worth it for him to play out the rest of his best years in Vancouver, because you can do that with Besser because he's going to be an RFA. You can do that with Pettersson because he's going to be an RFA again, even if the bridge deal comes to pass. You can't do it with Horvat again. You've already lost that. You got to make it worth his time to come back. And right now they seem to be doing an effort of that, hence why the OEL contract deal and some of the other signings and trades and deals that they've made are in that line of thinking. But that also means that you can't have a slip up. You can't slip up, and you can't go into year 2 and take a dip. You got to be
year 2 of your 7-year rebuild.
Right.
Year 2 of the second half of your 7-year to 8-year rebuild plan.
Yeah. You'll be into year 9 by that point of the Jim Benning era. You have to.
Oh, it won't be his era anymore. If they're at a point next year, where they miss playoffs next year, he's gone. I think even if they stumble out of the gate, he's probably gone.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm at the point with Jim Benning where it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he's gone.
You wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow they were like, Francesco Aquilini was
5
like,
years.
We've extended Jim Benning for another 5 years. We love his direction and what he's built here.
We have made Jim Benning. We vote to make Jim Benning the Chancellor of the Galactic Senate.
He loves democracy.
He loves democracy. That's right. Assistant General Manager Jar Jar Binks. What say you? This is
John Weisbrod.
John Weisbrod. Misa run the Orlando Magic.
And from NBA.
I will say I would love to hear from John Weisbrod more if he did talk like that.
Maybe that's why he doesn't do any media, because he sounds like Jar Jar Binks.
It's like with what's his name, Jared Kushner, how you didn't know what his voice sounded like, and then John Oliver did a whole bit on where it's like, this is what he actually sounds like, and then had Gilbert Gottfried just dub over him.
Yeah.
Like that's what it
that would actually, I would appreciate that so much if that was the truth. It's just like, he had a really shitty voice, so we never let him do media. He was embarrassed by it. He didn't want to let everyone know he sounds like Jar Jar Binks from the Phantom Menace. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, Misa love Mark Jankowski Okie Day. I'm for any of you who are not Star Wars nerds, I'm so sorry.
If you don't know the Star Wars universe, you're just lucky. Like, what the fuck are these two talking about? Anyway, we've waxed poetic a bit too long on the cap space thing, because you kind of have to. It's like a rite of passage for any podcast about the Canucks. Like it just has to come up. There's no way it can't come up. But we do actually have some Canucks news dropped the other day. Big signing, big trade. Canucks acquired goaltender Spencer Martin in exchange for future considerations. Now, I don't know if you're a prospect guy, but what are your thoughts on future considerations and what he meant to this organization?
He really meant a lot. Like he was a real stepping stone for the franchise, and when they drafted future considerations. Okay. In all seriousness,
a real glue guy.
Yeah, real glue guy. I don't really know much about Spencer Martin. I know you do because you watched him in Syracuse a number of times. Obviously this is an AHL signing. This is a guy meant to just provide depth. They did not qualify Jake Keeley. He moved on from the organization, and now that you have the Abbotsford Canucks coming in, or the A-Nucks as I'm calling them, I don't know if that's going to stick, but we'll see. It's kind of the closest I could think of, of how to differentiate between the big club and the small club. Where do you see, what do you see his ceiling being? Is it mostly just as backup for Mikey DiPietro, or is it going to go, or does it potentially go farther than that?
I think it can go either way. I think he's probably experienced enough that, in some kind of drastic situation, like Demko or Halak are injured, and DiPietro, you want to get him games, so you call up Spencer Martin instead. He's probably not going to ever get claimed on waivers because he is an AHL goalie. He does have some NHL games under his belt, but they weren't really that great. But he's a perfectly capable AHL goaltender. Or in the other context would be if DiPietro plays out of his mind and, he starts getting, they start thinking, we need to give him looks in the NHL. Then I could see them being well, it's fine because we have Spencer Martin to be the lead down there, and Silovs can fall into the backup position. So either way, he's a depth role player. He's not going to be a guy where you're I think we can get an NHL goalie out of him. It's purely just posturing in the event of injuries, or in the event that DiPietro comes out or comes into the season and is I'm ready for the NHL now. Kind of a few years ago when Thatcher Demko, through his agent, was basically I've got nothing to prove in the AHL anymore, so you're going to have to make space for me in the show. And to the Canucks' credit, they did, but it was kind of oh shit, we don't want to piss off the star goalie for our team or we're screwed.
Remember Mike McKenna's one game as a Canucks backup? That was part of that. That was part of that whole
Canucks
situation.
legend Mike McKenna.
Canucks legend Mike McKenna. No, undoubtedly. I know goaltending necessarily isn't your forte, but what did you like out of Martin when he played? What did you see from him that you liked best?
Yeah, he's just a reliable guy. Just fine. He's not going to light you up with, or he's not going to blow you away with athleticism or ridiculous highlight reel saves. He's just a fine, steady AHL goalie. He's not Big Save Dave or anything. He's just Spencer Martin, goaltender, perfectly capable. That's it.
Yeah, that's all. That's honestly
sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, that's really all you need, especially in the case of where it looks for as far as the A-Nucks are concerned, it's you gotta. They're
I'm
going
absolutely
to win.
stealing that, by the way.
The go for it. You totally can.
That's absolutely what I'm going for now. The A-Nucks harvest. Yeah. So then it's the AHL Canucks, or it's just a Nucks harvest.
Yeah, Abbotsford. Yeah,
I'm absolutely
for Abbotsford. It's A for AHL. It works perfectly, and it gives you a difference between the regular team and the bottom team, which is the important part. Which is going to be the important part idea. That we might.
As soon as we finish the recording, you just trademark it and charge me $1,000.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on merch on our new store.
Ooh, there you go.
Check that out, the CreaseCast store.
And then we get sued by the Vancouver Canucks and their new COO, Michael Doyle.
Yeah,
which was the other non-roster related, non-on ice related thing. But for the second time or fourth time in 8 years, the Canucks have a new chief operating officer as part of their business side of operations. Before it was Trent Carroll, who took over previously for Jeff Stipek, who had been the team's longtime COO for like years, I think.
And then before that, so he also only held it for 3 years. And then before that, it was Victor DeBonis, who you're.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I know I was forgetting one.
Victor DeBonis was there for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think that gets kind of lost in the shuffle because there were a lot of different business change. There have been a lot of upper management changes as far as the business ops of the Canucks are concerned in the last years. But Victor DeBonis was there for a very long time. Yeah. There were a lot of people from that very first. I feel like the Aquilini ownership era can be divided into two very different like segments where it used to be like there used to be guys who were there for like ever, who were there the entire time. And then now it seems like every so often you're seeing a lot of people like shuffle out the door, whether that's for pandemic reasons or for just
I was going to say
altogether.
The pandemic itself, I think there was like widely reported that there was like maybe 30 people left in both like business operations and hockey operations still working day to day for the organization. Like they cut like 90% of staff or something like that. It was like a bloodbath basically. And I think we all saw the Daily Hive posted like, oh, they're hiring for all of these positions. And the positions that they were hiring for had been occupied by, you know, some mainstays of the organization for the last like 10 years or something like that. Like Ben Brown, their director of communications, is out.
Stephanie Maniago had been there for a very, very long time. She'd been doing like press stuff for them for years.
Then the social media guy, I'm blanking on his name right now, but Derek Jory.
Derek Jory.
Yeah.
In fact, what's his name? The In Arena host officially left. I think just this week.
That's right.
He was only on the job for a year. People forget that he was
just hired for last season.
He had literally just gotten like the 50th season, and then I imagine he would have stayed on had the pandemic not happened, and that just changed things. Yeah, and then now you throw in the fact that Abbotsford needs a bunch of people. They're having to hire and I don't know, like, if any necessarily people are coming. It doesn't sound like anyone is being rehired.
It didn't really sound like it. That's why we saw such giant, like, ad postings for both organizations, right? Which is...
You're seeing almost a massive, like, what you could see behind... Like, maybe this is stuff that, like, say, the average fan won't necessarily notice.
Yeah.
But...
Or care about,
like,
but...
Or maybe not care about. I mean, I assume if you're listening to the show, you probably do care because you're listening to a hockey podcast in the middle of August. But
yes,
there's almost definitely there's clearly gonna be like, you know, probably a bit of a culture shift, like in terms of how behind the scenes, because of how many people you're gonna see who are coming in brand new to the organization. You could see a huge shift in, you know, how they how they do things and how they handle things. Whether that's good or bad, it could be one, it could be good, it could be bad, could be a little bit of both. Probably more likely, you know, little column A, little column B, but
little column B, little column B.
It will be different.
Yeah. The big takeaway for like if you're just kind of like your eyes glazing over listening to this segment, like it's just more fuel to the eyebrow raising stuff when it comes to how the organization's been run for the last, you know, 8 years. There's just so much turnover, and not just like every workplace in the world has turnover like at really high rates for the most part. But rarely do you see like a hockey organization see practically all of these guys turned over in such a like violent, turbulent way. It isn't just like, you know, oh, my time is up, I'm moving on to a greater opportunity. It's like they announced they were coming back, made a bunch of player signings, and it was like, okay, 16 mainstay regulars of the management and like off ice hockey crew are out. It's a
very quiet leave. Like in terms of like it's kind of thrown in underneath a little bit. Like it's very much like they're. I don't want to say cover up because that feels a little bit more nefarious than it might be. But like, you know, it definitely feels like it's something that should be probably a little bit more important, just being kind of thrown in at the back end. And, you know, not hearing as much about it. Like you're not getting a farewell from anybody. You're just seeing them move on. Like you're just seeing them go to on to the next thing.
It's a bit strange, but that about sums up the Canucks related news for everybody. So now we get into the The dramedy, the all drama. What was that like ad? They're like, no drama, just hockey or whatever.
Oh, no soap operas.
No soap operas, just hockey.
A phrase that has definitely not been
not mean to death or mocked.
It's been definitely proven right many times. Many times since that came out. That was I cannot believe how quickly they got owned.
You just know what happened. What happened was they were at some kind of meeting with all the old white hockey men, and they're like, we're tired of this soap opera shit. We just want to play hockey. And they're like, that's so awesome. That's got to be a slogan for a PR campaign.
What's so funny is they only used it on one Facebook ad.
And everyone remembers it.
But it's completely
so funny.
Taken on a new life to the point where it's literally anytime anything goes a little bit more controversial, you just see it come up. They really outdid themselves on that one. I'll say this: it's the best viral marketing they've gotten ever.
Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't even plan for it. That's how. That's
question mark.
That's a sign. That's a good one, because I was thinking of that slogan when Jack Eichel's agents put out their statement being like, we're sick of this shit. Let our client get his surgery or fucking trade us. We're fucking done with the Sabres.
And that's verbatim what they said.
It was literally what they said. 2 sentences.
Said that. No.
And it was accompanied by a graphic of Jack Eichel flipping off the camera. It's just incredible.
See, the one I saw was Jack Eichel being stabbed by a sword, and then and then Kevin Adams
written on the sword.
That's what I saw.
You know that? Okay, so you know that Simpsons episode where they rebuild Ned's house because of the hurricane,
right?
And everyone's like, he loses it, and he's like, calm down, and then he goes over and he's like, I don't know about you, but you're a jerk. That's Jack Eichel. Yeah, so Jack Eichel is Ned in that situation, and and Ned turns to Lenny, who is Kevin Adams, I don't know who you are, but you're a jerk. And Kevin Adams is hey, it's my first year, give me a break. So,
I mean, some of the stuff, for sure.
He's trying. Kevin Adams is trying, but it's I mean, what first things first, Jack Eichel, you had no obligation to sign a 10-year, $11 million contract with the Buffalo Sabres.
Whoa, hold on.
He didn't. He didn't have to.
Sure, but also, I mean, that's a bit harsh for a guy who literally has a head issue, like a serious neck issue, and they won't let him get surgery. That's obviously a big deal, but I mean in the sense, because before the neck issue came out too, it was he wanted out. And then the neck stuff came out afterwards, and that's why he was so angry about it. But as far as anyone knew, it was just he was done with the losing. He wanted out, and a part of me has always been even in McDavid's case too, I'm it's a culture of losing. The Sabres have been a dumpster fire for when he was drafted at 5 years at that point, where they were just doing nothing. And he was under no obligation to, agree to a 10-year, $11 million contract. He could have negotiated for a bridge deal or whatever, but he chose the giant payout instead with no movement clauses. So he can't be shocked when it's oh yeah, this is really hard to trade you, bro. Obviously the Sabres are also a bad guy because they're not letting him undertake a surgery that would make his livelihood better. But there's still there's still that asterisk in my brain where I'm man, why did you sign here in the first place? Well, he was an RFA, right? He didn't have a choice.
No, he does. When you're that good though, you could still be oh hey, I'll renegotiate with you for a 3-year, $21 million contract. He could do that, but he didn't want it. He wanted the big payday.
I suppose, but and they gave him the captaincy, they gave him everything else, but I feel I feel that stuff is completely secondary when you throw in the fact that this is a guy who needs a surgery to potentially continue his hockey career, and the Sabres are actively not letting him get it. To the point where he might now miss the start of next season because they're actively making it harder for him to play hockey, and they've thrown any leverage the Sabres had over other teams to move him out the window. They don't have anything now. Now
they're not helping either.
they're not helping him. They're not helping him get moved necessarily, but at the same time, like when they're not letting you get, if they're not going to let you get surgery, the surgery you desperately need, like you need to continue your career. Like what else can you really do?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of stuck to the point where it's like, hey, trade him right now so we can get his surgery on for the right team and everything. And it seems like a lot of the situation is being decided by the upstairs people, like beyond just Kevin Adams.
The Pagulas, notoriously good people, Pagulas.
I have something to say on the Pagulas after we're done.
Oh yeah, their stadium demands. Is that what you're going to talk about?
I was. Do you know how much they're at?
$1.5 billion to be paid by the taxpayers for a brand new stadium. Like fuck off.
For the Buffalo Bills. And you know how much of that is, you know how much of the final cost is public money? 100% of it. Yeah, exactly. The full amount they want to be paid by the public.
I think we've actually talked about the Pagulas on here before. Wild. And you were telling me about he was commissioning a new boat.
A super yacht.
Yeah, a super yacht. That's right. So it's like
super yacht.
Fuck off. You don't need. You can buy it.
Yeah, I believe their second super yacht.
Yeah,
and then
sell your first super yacht.
And then they want to claim poverty, and they want the taxpayers to pay for their new stadium, which is just wild to say the least. Like, so the Sabres trade, just move on from him, I guess. Like now it's a question of where does he go?
I think I read this somewhere. I heard this on the radio, but it was like because obviously a lot of people are just like, Eichel, just get the surgery you actually want and, let it be done with because they can't control your fucking body. But apparently there's some kind of like legal thing where like in his contract, he's not allowed to undertake any surgery that isn't dictated by the team doctors. And if he does, he's in breach of his contract and it can get voided or something like that. But
that's entirely true.
But the thing is, it isn't voided in the sense like it just gets deleted and he can go sign elsewhere. It's voided and the Buffalo Sabres still retain his rights until the end of the contract. So his playing career would be like completely toast if they so choose to do so.
Right. It's one of the, because otherwise like potentially like players could just be going off doing like getting signings like stuff done that the team has no idea about and I get why that's in there. It's a little in this particular case it's causing a massive problem. It's causing a massive gross problem, but like he can't get he cannot get the surgery unless the team needs to either do the thing or like and trade him or let him get his damn surgery because
it seems like a very simple solution.
It's Bush League is what's going on here. It's total Bush League
on their part.
On their part, like so, and I know we've kind of had this conversation before, but now it seems like at the very least, like hopefully it's going to come to an end sooner rather than later. Like is he going to Vegas? Is he going to New York, LA? Where do you see this going now? Now that we know what the free agency market and what these teams have done. Has your idea on where he goes changed at all?
Well, I thought the team closest to actually picking up was going to be Minnesota, but when they were like, the price is too steep, so we're out, that kind of changed my opinion to being like, I don't think he even gets moved at this point because the demand is like the ask is too high. The only team that has like the prospect pool that could probably do like trade for him is LA, but they're like committed to their rebuild a bit and they don't really, I don't see why they'd be like, okay, we've just stockpiled this like 30 player AHL team that are all under 22 years old. Let's trade most of it to Buffalo on top of 3 first round picks and some established player for a first line center that isn't really going to help our rebuild, but makes us better immediately. And he needs next surgery that might not actually result in him being the same player again. That's a lot of risk for what they'd have to give up, right? A lot of like medical folks are like, the surgery that Eichel wants is actually like pretty common and pretty safe, but they do recommend like you stay away from contact sports afterwards. And it's like, it's a bit hard to do when you're like a first line center in the NHL to stay away from contact.
Ideally, you'll be playing the most contact sports of anyone.
Yes.
In that situation. But yeah, I mean that's I guess why the Sabres have been so tentative to let him get it. But
yeah,
I mean, I like at the same time, you're getting to the point where it's like they don't really have no one really has a choice. You kind of just have to let him. Otherwise, he'll never play. It doesn't matter. He'll never play anyway.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take the risk, bite the bullet, and let him go get it. Go let him get healthy. So he actually at least stands a chance of winning, because right now it's 0. Right now, until he gets it, it's 0. So you have to let him get it somewhere. You have to let him get something. You have to let him get fixed. I think Vegas is out to a certain degree. Like, I think they have the most pieces to maybe give up. But I don't. Again, with the neck surgery thing. Again, this is the key part here. This is why the agent speaking out, I think, makes a huge difference here. Is the fact that now that the leverage is gone for the Sabres, in theory, now the asking price can't be nearly as high as it was a little bit ago. So now a team could, in theory, get him for a much cheaper price than probably the asinine amount that Buffalo is asking for.
Right.
I guess Vegas has the most pieces to get that done, but the Sabres are probably looking for a younger group, especially because they're going for Shane Wright next year. Them in Arizona, pretty much. That sums it up for those two teams. I guess if I'm looking at the list of teams and I knowing the group that probably most is interested, I have to feel like it's I feel like the Rangers are still the number one odds to get him. I think they have the most pieces that the Sabres would want to go get him. And in the case of like the Kings, for example, they might be in the position where they're potentially closer to a playoff spot than the Rangers are. But I also feel like that implies that they would be less likely to risk half the farm for Jack Eichel. Right. So I can't imagine them being like, okay, we're going to give up Quinton Byfield, even though we have a shot at the playoffs for a guy who has to have neck surgery, right? The Rangers are in a spot where they can kind of take that risk and not really lose too much out of the ordeal, because they're not really necessarily a playoff team right now. They're not necessarily, but they're also not necessarily tanking either. So they're kind of in a spot where they can take that risk and not have it necessarily and not worry about it completely blowing up in their face. Yeah. That being said, it does sound like Buffalo doesn't want to trade him in division, which
really narrows their options.
You need to get over that. Get over that. If you're making a trade that you think is going to make you better in the long term, hell, if you want Shane Wright, you know what'll help is Jack Eichel scoring a bunch of goals against you. Yes. So just send him to the Rangers. Like, good Lord, send it. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it will be the Rangers. The Kings I could see though. I could see the Kings going for it. Because again, they're in a spot where they, outside of Vegas, there's not really a guaranteed playoff team outside of the Knights. So they might be like, let's give it a shot and go, because this is the year. If you want to give it a shot for the playoffs, this is the year to do it.
Maybe Ottawa takes a run. They're
that's
they're $9 million short of the cap floor, and all they have to
actually that's wild.
They're $9 million short, and they have to re-sign Drake Batherson and Brady Tkachuk. So if I'm Ottawa, I'm going to Eugene Melnyk and being like, buddy, I need you to authorize us trade, because they've got a good prospect pool. They've got a ton of young pieces. So it would make no sense because they're a garbage team. But
I was going to say, like, the price tag would start with Thomas Chabot, who's your one good defenseman. You're not giving him away. Like,
but if you're like Eugene Melnyk or Pierre Dorion, aren't you selling them the idea that, like, we need fans back in this venue? Brady Tkachuk is a good piece, and like he's gonna sell tickets. This young core is gonna sell tickets. But you know what'll sell tickets? An actual bona fide star first line center in Jack Eichel, feeding Brady Tkachuk one-timers, feeding Drake Batherson or Josh Norris, like whatever. Like, in theory, they could use this to both like semi-improve and not really lose too much, and sells tickets, which is probably what Eugene Melnyk is desperate to try and do.
Yep.
But I mean,
that's fair.
It makes so much sense that they'll never do it.
Yeah. So in other words, I look forward to seeing Jack Eichel in a Tampa Bay Lightning uniform in a week from now.
with their $7.5 million over the cap, they'll somehow figure it out.
But see, he has to go on LTIR for a bit because he has to have the surgery.
Jack Eichel shows up in next year's playoffs.
They go on like an
scores
Edmonton,
30
like
points
an 80s
in
Oilers dynasty run.
Oh my
but
God.
They're doing it with in 100, like literally like where they're double like the entire salary. They're an entire salary cap in LTIR.
Oh my God, funny. This is a trade that is starting to make a lot of sense now.
In exchange for it would be like
Sergachev, Palat.
Not
Sternak.
Because then they'll start losing. It needs to be obvious. It needs to be good. The piece needs to be good enough to make it seem like a reasonable trade, but bad enough that it still doesn't diminish the fact that they'd win. They just trade Kucherov. Just Cernak. Yeah, just be. I was gonna say it's just
Kucherov for Eichel 1-for-1.
Oh man. I don't.
Food for thought. Food for thought.
Somehow they'll find a way to keep them all. Like they'll just find a way to keep.
They'll get them all. Doesn't matter.
Or like
they'll trade Cal Foot and that's it.
Or like Edmonton will be like, here, we'll give you Draisaitl for him. Like just
or Jack Eichel doesn't play at all next season because he gets the surgery that the team wants him to. He doesn't play all season, and the Oilers don't make playoffs. So Ken Holland, in all his infinite wisdom, says, I'll trade you McDavid for Jack Eichel, who has not played for an entire season. I have
to imagine Connor McDavid has a no trade clause somewhere.
Oh, he probably does. I'm sure he's got
I'm sure Buffalo is on it. Sorry, Buffalo. Yeah. But oh man. I think there was at one point last year where I was pretty convinced that he was going to end up on the Oilers, but playing alongside McDavid and Draisaitl. And I was going to be it's going to be so annoying when they're really good in the regular season and then immediately just dip in round one again.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so mad about it.
They score 27 points in 4 games between the 3 of them, but they get swept.
Connor McDavid has 200, beats Wayne Gretzky's record 200 points in a single season, and then they're out in 5 against Seattle,
so before we get into kind of a shitty topic, just to remind Canucks fans listening to this right now, the Edmonton Oilers are banking on the exact same lineup to make playoffs and succeed on the backs of Mike Smith, 39-year-old Mike Smith, and his 2-year contract. Just so everyone remembers. And just, if you want to feel good.
Don't forget about Duncan Keith and
Keith and Cody Ceci.
And Cody Ceci, and there was something else. There was someone else.
Zach Hyman and his
Zach Hyman. That's right.
And then also, Darnell Nurse apparently wants a $9.5 million contract too.
So do we. Don't we all?
We do. We want him to get paid by Edmonton very badly.
Yes, I would love him to get. Yeah, Mikko Koskinen, don't forget, is also there with $4.5
Yes, he is allegedly a hockey player.
He's a great Canuck last year. Mikko Koskinen did a great job with the Canucks last year.
What was it when he let in 4 goals on 4 shots?
Yeah, something insane. I felt bad. I honestly felt bad.
I didn't. I thought it was so funny.
I feel bad from a goalie to goalie. I'm just
sure,
my
fair
God. We've all had those games.
Yeah,
but also poor Mikko Koskinen.
I'm sure
every night.
I'm sure Koskinen's a very nice fellow. Just came out of nowhere to be an NHL goaltender and signed to a terrible deal by an idiot GM. So
literally on his way out.
Literally on his way out. Literally as he's getting fired.
Literally on his way out the door the next day. It was wild that they let him. Literally wild that they let him make that contract happen. That spoke volumes about the Oilers and how they're on. Hey, we've said it before. This Canucks team is definitely better this year. They could definitely make the playoffs in this specific division.
It's a very low bar. The Pacific Division.
It's a very low bar.
It is Vegas, and then who knows? Up in the air. Everything else. a complete
Fury
guess.
Road. It's literally just Fury Road behind the Knights. Like, that's it.
Okay, let's get the elephant out of the room, the Evander out of the room here. For those that don't know, Evander Kane and his currently, I guess, separated wife are going through a very bitter divorce at the moment. And over the weekend, his ex-wife went onto Instagram to publicly blast Evander Kane for his poor parenting, his, gambling, his
allegedly,
his vacationing, all allegedly. It's all just it's clearly just like a very bitter divorce that is, I'm sure there's some truth rooted in her accusations, but the accusations turned very ugly when she implied that Evander Kane, while battling his current gambling addiction, was betting on his own games, and in that also implied that he was purposely throwing them for the purposes of gambling. Now, the NHL reacted very promptly and said they would begin investigating. Ironically, they announced they would start investigating infinitely faster than any other hockey drama that has happened over the last couple months, the Chicago one being primary.
The biggest one there,
the most important one, the only story really worth following in hockey right now. NHL didn't say they're going to do anything about that until prompted, but here they are. Black hockey player might be gambling on his teams, and within 20 minutes announced they're investigating it. So it goes.
So I have an article here from ESPN, Greg Wyshynski, and David Purdom, basically talking about kind of like what we do and don't know about this whole situation and everything. Mm-hmm. One of the obvious things that they spent a good amount of time talking about is the fact of the biggest. So the reason the NHL is talking about this, is investigating it all, is because is potentially, say, if you're throwing games, like especially for a league that's trying to get into get into sports betting, into legalized sports betting and making it a part of your game, you can't have players betting on themselves and then purposely playing poorly to win money, right? Because that obviously makes the game, obviously then
it compromises the integrity of the game, and therefore it's not a sellable asset, or like a sellable game to bookies or nationalized gambling services in America.
Or anybody for that matter.
Yeah, it's a bad look on the game in general.
It's this, if you look at like the biggest case of this, the biggest two cases of this happening, of course, were Pete Rose in the MLB. When he came out that he was betting on his own games. They also had a situation in the early 1900s when a whole team of Chicago White Sox players through the World Series because their ownership wasn't paying them enough money. And then in the NBA there was the Tim Donaghy scandal where referees were allegedly, I don't know if it was ever fully proven outside of him, but he was betting on games and purposely calling foul what games he was refereeing in the playoffs, and then purposely calling fouls to push the team he bet on to win. So the NBA has claimed in that case that he was the only one, but the referee in question has written books saying that this was actually widespread and lots of referees did it. Whether or not you believe him is up to you. But the key thing that they spent a lot of time on here in the hockey case is it really possible for Evander Kane, a one left winger on a bench of 20, to throw his own games, And the idea is kind of like it's sort of possible. Like the way the conclusion they come to is like, again, because this is all would have to be proven in court and what have you, is it is kind of possible, like in the sense of like, say he could take bad penalties that at wrong times to potentially change something,
intentionally flub scoring chances. Like there's a lot of speculation you can glean from this.
And one thing they did mention is that Evander Kane has been whistled for more minor penalties than any other player in the NHL over the past 3 seasons of play. Now that could just be something Kane is chalked up to. This is a quote from the article. Something Kane is chalked up to on ice officials holding a bias against him. I do have to I will say this. The big thing with this is that if a player was intentionally throwing games, I don't know for sure. This is just pure speculation on my part, but I feel like you would notice a little bit. It's
for
kind
sure.
of it's hockey in particular. It would be very hard for you to throw a game on your own.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're one of 5 players. If it turned out he was betting on his teams to win, then I could get it because he had a career year where he was they're arguably San Jose's best player when it came to production.
And even then, that would be on the idea that he was still playing to the best of his ability, right?
Yeah,
so it's not
exactly.
Intentionally screwing. It's even it's still a conflict of interest, but it's not screwing up purposefully and ruining and essentially fixing results, right? And even the people, some of the people they've talked to in this article are if you're a goalie, you could maybe let in a few soft goals, but even then it's still it would still be really obvious that it's going on. You would be able to tell if a goaltender was clearly flubbing a game on his own. And that's the only real way that you could really do that effectively, because again, even if you take a bad penalty in the last minute of a game to potentially send it to OT, there's no guarantee that your team won't just kill that penalty off and end the game. It's just not. That doesn't matter. Now, again, I think you and I are of the idea of the mindset that the thing that's more important here at the end of the day is from what Anna Kane, Evander's wife, is made public, is the fact that he supposedly does have a gambling issue, and that it's well known among his teammates that he does have an issue with gambling, and that would tie in to a lot of other things that, if you've been following anything about Evander Kane's story of late, the bankruptcy,
his $28 million bankruptcy, the fact that the bank was trying to basically have his contract signed over to the bank, and he is fighting that in court so he wouldn't technically be a slave, because he effectively would be if all of his paychecks were signed over to the bank and he saw none of it.
Yeah, and there's just those all tie into, and there's that one photo of him in Vegas that always pops up around.
It's a great photo.
It's an
iconic photo.
It's an iconic.
Unfortunately,
it's an infamous photo, I think.
Now it is. It's very infamous.
And I think at the end of the day, this is a case of obviously, if somebody has a gambling addiction, which is what his wife is insinuating allegedly he does have, it's bad for everybody. It's not good for her, obviously. It's not good for him either. Whether or not he's the best person off the ice is up for debate, and that's people who know him can make that decision. But if this is a case of somebody, if he does have a gambling issue, needs help, just needs help.
Yeah, I was going to say the real takeaway from here is there's 2 things that can be true at the same time. One being that Evander Kane, through all that we know about him as a character off ice, doesn't really come off like a guy that's necessarily a good person. There's been character issues brought up before, even before anyone knew about the gambling issues or whatever. There was the alleged stories of him paying for multiple abortions against his spouse's will. There's all allegedly is what I'm saying.
There have been lawsuits against him, but there was a lawsuit against
multiple
him in
lawsuits against women, assault charges. There just a lot. There's a history. And
skipping on dinner bills in Winnipeg was another one that came up. I remember at one point, just dining and dashing at restaurants when he was a Jet. There's come up a number of times.
There's enough history and evidence there, alleged or not, because of course a lot of these claims kind of get settled outside of court so that there isn't a public record of it. But there's enough of it where you can rightly so judge him in the court of public opinion and be like, you know what? I don't like him. I don't think he's a good person. At the same time, speaking from experience, people with gambling addictions do not operate the same way that regular human beings do. They have a completely different set of priorities in their life, and with number one being the objective of satisfying their desire to be up. So whereas alcoholics, they always feel the need to drink booze or be inebriated, right? For gambling addicts, it's always this urge to feel like they are in control or winning, basically. Right. So they will go out of their way to spend fortunes, untold fortunes. They will borrow money. They will, take out loans. They will do whatever they can. Money they don't have to satisfy an urge of feeling like they're in control. And even if they lose every single bet, if they win one for like bet $1 and they bet $2, that little feeling of winning is all it takes to satisfy the idea in their mind that what they're doing is okay, and that everything that they've done to that point is justified. And
you don't respond to reason in that case.
Correct. You have a completely different set of priorities in your life, and a lot of the priorities that you and I, normal people with like heads on our shoulders, would say, yeah, my priority in life right now is my wife who is at home taking care of her daughter as my daughter as she's pregnant. But for a gambling addict, he doesn't see it that way. His priority is, how can I spend this money so that I win and I'm in control? And so long as I win and I'm, in control of my life, then anyone who is criticizing me for doing what I'm doing, they are incorrect. They don't see it. They don't see that I'm in control. And so the two things can be true, where it's like Evander Kane might be just a shitty dude in real life, but at the same time, Evander Kane could be a good father. He could be a good person. He could be a good husband, boyfriend, friend in general, person in general, but his life is dictated by a disease that he has no control of. And it's one of the hardest abuses or substance abuse issues not substance abuse, but it's one of the biggest mental illnesses to overcome, because a lot of the issues around gambling addiction it's about lifestyle. It isn't like booze where like, okay, I'm just going to avoid liquor stores, I'm going to avoid restaurants, and I'm going to have fight the urge internally, right?
You can't avoid
money. You cannot avoid money. You cannot. I urge you the next time you're in any store, just take a look for a Keno machine or a lottery center.
That's
because
true. Bingo.
Every single convenience store, every single mall,
gas station,
and look for the ads. I hear them on the radio every day to advertise for the BC Lotto. I see them on buses. I see them on bus stops. I see them on newspapers.
Yeah, you see Lotto Max ads on the boards at the arena. Like it's not even escapable in your own ice rink.
And and that's just like government supplied gambling. It isn't even take into account 50-50 draws. It doesn't take into account like the millionaire home lottery that gets mailed to everyone every single year. Like it
doesn't take into account like going to a Las Vegas or a full-on casino, like a full-blown casino. Yeah. Like there are how many times have you ever gone to a place where it doesn't have like a scratch and win counter?
Exactly.
And that might not seem, and obviously we're talking about more money than that and more probably bigger, extravagant, more gambling things than that.
But even
it all
the
comes
small
from the same place.
It's the same thing. And I mean, again, speaking from experience, those small amounts, like you look at like a lottery ticket and you're like, okay, it's $5 to play once, right?
It's easy to lose a lot.
It's very easy to make that $5 into 2,500 or 25,000 when you take a stack of lottery cards and you fill every single one of them out and you play them every second day or every day in the hopes of coming out on top. Now, Evander Kane is obviously a player with resources to obtain lots of money. He is surrounded by players, friends, and family who are obviously affluent enough that could be, supporting or enabling his addiction. But so long as he doesn't see his problem as an addiction and just sees it as his wife being crazy, then he's not in the right direction or the right headspace to probably play hockey until he has it under control. And at the end of the day, this entire situation just sucks because the ones that really suffer the most are going to be his kids. Like reading the part about his daughter just walking around his house, like wanting her dad. Like that's
heartbreaking.
That's heartbreaking to read. And as someone who's gone through the experiences of a family member dealing with a gambling addiction, I know that feeling of like you just can't explain why someone hasn't put you first in the priority list, but you understand now that you're older, like, okay, I get it. Like your faculties are not there anymore, but it's a lot harder when it's, me being a 15-year-old going on to 16 or 17 instead of, what's his daughter, 4 years old, 5 years old. Like that's
very young. And potentially a second one on the way as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So the NHL doesn't really have a great history of offering the resources to help players rehabilitate in their lives. Usually it happens after a player's career is over when they seek help and find ways to deal with their either mental illness issues or their substance abuse problems. So all I can say is I hope whoever is in charge of their, wellness program in the NHL, like they do understand the severity of the situation. And I pray and hope that Evander Kane gets the help that he needs, because it's not going to help him. It's not going to help his family, his wife, his relationships with his children or his family, friends, teammates, whatever. It's just a disaster that is unfolding. Yeah. And there was a piece that came out, I think, from I don't know if it was Wyshynski or Rick Westhead or someone, but the story today that came out was like, oh, the Sharks wanted to trade him because he was a locker room cancer. And it's just like, does it need to be said? Does it really?
It
is completely secondary to like shitting on the guy if he legitimately has like a serious gambling issue. And you would think like the first investigation would be, we're going to figure out how deep this rabbit hole goes, and then we'll go from there. It shouldn't just be like, let's pile on.
And like, even if the NHL finds let's say the investigation finds no result of like, say, throwing games or something, but it does find like obvious symptoms of like gambling addiction. You hope that the NHL and the Sharks are make a conscious effort of going, okay, we're gonna get you the help that you need. Obviously you have to want that yourself as well, right? The first step is being
you have to be cognizant and aware that like the issues you're facing are self-destructive and damaging to not only yourself or your career, but also the people within your circle too. And so, I mean, fuck, it usually does take hitting rock bottom for that moment to happen. And unfortunately, this might not be it for him, right? Like
you hope so. You hope
it would, because
to a certain degree.
The longer this like exacerbates, like it's just gonna get worse and worse.
And you never know. Like, I don't know, like what. I know there's been some discussion of like, say, could the Sharks end up voiding his contract? Is there a way that they can void his contract? Well, you almost, in a way, you hope that they can't, just because if they did, then they would feel like, well, we have no liability here. We have no responsibility to happen to him anymore. Like, when in actuality, like they should be the ones making sure that he's getting the utmost stuff that he needs. And then like, let's say that it does come to the idea of like, okay, we don't want you on the ice anymore. You hope that they're still making the conscious effort of, we're going to make sure that you are back to yourself before we're not going to just cast you off into
we're not going to leave you defend yourselves without your contract that has basically been the only thing keeping you afloat for your entire adult life, right? Like, we're going to set you up with the resources to get the help you need. Exactly. And we, like, if you're the San Jose Sharks, you're like, we hope you, Evander, take this time to better yourself, maybe take a year off. Don't play, focus on yourself and trying to improve instead of like God, just going after the next contract to fuel your urges. So
yeah, it's all very sad.
It's all really sad. It's all really shitty.
For everybody.
Yeah,
obviously.
I don't want to circle back and say the same thing, but I really cannot understate how much I disliked seeing that story come out today. That was just like, yeah, his teammates wanted him gone. It's just like, fuck off. Shit doesn't matter. Like his family, his ex-wife and his kids are what matter. Like it doesn't matter what fucking mega chud Brent Burns thinks of fucking Evander Kane or whatever. You know what I mean? Like fuck off with that shit. Let the internal investigation like do its due course and then move on from there. Just leave, like, don't fucking pile on. It doesn't help anybody. Anyway, speaking of not helping anybody.
Oh no.
Big addition to the ESPN broadcast. I mean, John Tortorella is a very funny interview when in the perfect ideal circumstances. I don't know how I feel about him being an analyst.
Yeah, I saw some people being like, I'm sure he's good. He's done it before. Like he's done some analyst stuff before. And I saw some like people talking about how it's like, it kind of sucks that like somebody who's been super adversarial with the media before is getting a job in media. And you're
above like a lot of people who've paid their dues.
Yeah,
and they already have so many like former hockey like coaches and players a part of it. It's just like, and there was really no one else.
Yeah, and then like I saw somebody, I forget who it was, but I saw somebody suggest like, well, like Brian Burke, what about him? It's like, well, Brian Burke was a little different. Like he volleyed with the media a little bit. Like he was more willing to play the game a little bit with media rather than I don't remember a moment where he was like objectively just like being a jerk to media people for the sake of being a jerk. There's a big difference between that and like Brian Burke went out of his way to actually be on make media appearances, even if he didn't.
Yes, he like set aside his own time on a radio show to talk about the Vancouver Canucks when he was the GM. Like,
right,
he got the game even if he disagreed with like how his teams were covered by certain types, right? Like he got it for the most part.
He was willing to play ball a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas I think John Tortorella is somebody who, like, again, I don't know as much about him since he left Vancouver, and Point Roberts, but
he's still there.
He's still there. I think, but I don't know. I feel a little bit. I'm not. It's not something I'm going to lose my shit over or anything. Like,
right.
It's not that big a deal, but it is a little bit like, oh, you could have gone. There were better options, probably. There were some better people.
There weren't any women. There weren't any people of color.
Yeah,
no.
Maybe you could have seen something. Maybe you could have gone, like, you could go in a different direction than that. Yeah, it's just not the best. Like,
no. Bit of a bummer, like, because it's just
question mark.
So you know what's wild? Did you read the Minnesota Wild piece that Scott Burnside did? So it's on The Athletic, and I urge anyone listening to this to go read it. But it's basically like the guy was embedded into the upper management staff throughout the week of the draft, and he basically just like provided like a complete insider look into how the management team went about the entire week. It's an incredible piece of like journalism. And he got fired by The Athletic, literally this week.
He got fired? I thought he just left.
Go. Whatever.
I thought he just left.
I think he got
I think that was
Elliot Friedman on 31 or 32 Thoughts implied that he was let go. So
I don't imagine.
You will.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know
but
if that has anything
point
to do
is,
with that, but we'll see.
You read a piece like that and you're like, oh man, this guy's put in his dues. Like, has anyone ever approached him about being on a TV analyst? Like, he clearly understands the inner workings of the league and teams, and he's a writer, so he understands how to formulate stories. But did anyone ask him? Like, no. They saw John Tortorella was free and were like, hey, an old white hockey man. Like, isn't Mike Babcock a part of their broadcast team too? Or is he still?
I don't think so. No, I don't think Babcock.
He was just an NBC one-off. I guess.
Yeah, because remember he wants to coach again. So remember that's the thing with Mike Babcock is Mike Babcock, who refers to himself as the first person all the time.
He sure does.
He wants to coach again. We'll see how that goes. Sure. I mean, again, here's the thing: Torts will be good at TV. Like I'll give them that much. That he would be. He is a good TV personality. It's just you wish they'd maybe looked a little bit farther outside the former coach box, like that's just kind of at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's all you can hope for. Just like maybe, expand the horizons a little bit.
Yeah.
Other bummer news, NHL apparently not going to the Olympics in Beijing in 2022.
No, they are. They're going to the Olympics. That's a good thing. That's good news.
Oh, I thought I read that they weren't going.
So, okay. So this is an NHL story. So they were basically right now unable to agree on like a media rights deal with the Olympics. Basically, like they wanted access to their clips, to the Olympic clips to showcase on NHL products and promotions and stuff. And they haven't been able to come to that agreement. And part of that is apparently part of the reason why they're backing down a little bit from that is because they're no longer with NBC, who is obviously broadcasts the Olympics beforehand. Now they're not with them. Now they're going to ESPN and TNT, who don't have Olympic access, but they are still likely going to the Olympics because again, it's from what I can tell here. Yeah, they still intend on sending the players there. If any of you have seen the Olympic or the NHL schedule, it does have an Olympic break built into it right now. I believe they have a second one ready to go if they don't go, but it seems like they have the schedule they released to the public is the one with the Olympic break built into it. So from February 4th and 5th are NHL All-Star Weekend in Vegas, and then from there the 7th to the 22nd is the Olympic break. So actually, one thing I wanted to ask you, we didn't have time last week to talk about the Canucks schedule. Not that there's too much to glean out of it right now. Well, obviously, we're back to playing 31 teams again. Well, back to playing everybody, I should say. We add a new opponent this year into the mix with the Kraken. And now the schedule, and because of not only the fact that they're starting a little bit later, but also because of the extended Olympic break plus All-Star Weekend, both happening in the same year, which we normally don't get. The season goes from October. The Canucks season starts October 13th in Edmonton, and I have as part of a six game road trip to start the year. And then it ends on April 29th. So at the very tail end of April, about where we would have ended this year had the COVID break not happened, against the Kings. And which would imply that in theory, the playoffs could go into like July again, potentially, right? Like they could potentially go into like if a couple playoff series get extended, you could see it maybe go all the way right to the end of June into late July. And I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of like this schedule, like in terms of like going forward, starting in later October and going to like having the season end in July. I'm a big proponent of more summer hockey and starting a little bit starting a little bit later in the year. I think that's better, especially like when it comes to, not having the playoffs always line up with the NBA playoff, like the NBA finals and the NHL finals always being at the exact same time, I think is a good thing for the league. Mm-hmm. I think it helps them get their own spotlight sometimes. I kind of like this schedule as kind of a potential for one that they should look into more going forward. I don't know what you think here.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Like I appreciate the shorter turnaround for like teams that are out of the playoffs. Like that just seems better. Like instead of, a team being out in April and not playing again until next October, like being out instead of, in May or June or whatever. Like that seems, I don't know, at least more appealing. I'm sure the players hate it because they want their 2 months or 3 or 4 month break, but
yeah, especially if you missed the playoffs, right? Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know.
I also just want to say I am very sick and tired of starting the season in Edmonton every year. Can we stop doing that now? Like, why? Why is this still a thing? Why do we keep like, when was the last time the Canucks opened the season at home? I can't even remember. Like, it's been literally, it was Edmonton last year. It was Edmonton the year before, or it might have been Calgary and then Edmonton. Pardon me. And then I think even before that, it was Edmonton again. Like, they always start in like Edmonton or Calgary. They never get a home game for the first game of the year anymore. I don't know why. I guess maybe it just has something to do with the fact that they're playing a Wednesday night game. And so they want Vancouver, like the home game in Vancouver on the Saturday rather than the Wednesday. But even then, I'm just kind of like, can we get a new opponent, please, to start the year? Just
I have a feeling it probably has to do with like that the NHL schedulers like know that Canucks Twitter is a shitstorm. And so they're like, let's always start the team on the road. And if they lose, then there's going to be tons of traction because all the Canucks fans are going to go nuts and talk about how shit the team is.
They're going to be at home and not at the game.
Exactly. So it all works out for the engagement clicks is what they're looking for here.
Yeah, that first road trip is fascinating too, just because it goes so it's 6 games, right? But it goes,
and it's all over the map.
Yeah, it's Edmonton, Philadelphia, Detroit, Buffalo, Chicago, Seattle at the very end for Seattle's first home game, might I add. That's their first inaugural home game. And then back to Vancouver to play Minnesota in their home opener on the 26th of October. That's something else. Like that is
that's a track.
Now, to be fair, they then get 7 games in a row at home, but still that's a grinding start. If we talked last year the Canucks made a lot of had a lot of complaints about the schedule and how it played out for them conveniently, after it started poorly. But
it's almost as if they should be trying to fight this and argue for a better schedule, especially given how they had to get the players to argue for a better schedule after their COVID outbreak.
Now, could you argue that this is in theory a better schedule just on the basis of like just looking at the schedule? It's most like I'm not seeing any home and homes here. I'm seeing mostly extended road trip, then extended home set, extended road trip, extended home set. I'm not seeing a lot of shuffle in between from the two. Could you not argue that in theory is a better schedule than say going from home away, away home, home
away like for again? Sure, yeah. Like, you want to have like your home stretches and then your road stretches. Like you don't have to do like one at home and then you're out of there. One at home, then you're out of there. Like that sucks.
It's better for marketing in a sense as well. Like it's much better for marketing a string of games as well. Like when you have the home games like all in a row like that, it's much easier, I would imagine. So like even like looking at their first half of the season, I think the only time they go to a road game they go from a home game to a road game and then back home is 2 games in December. And they're both against San Jose. So like they're literally their second closest opponent. So I would argue that this is a better schedule than we've gotten in the past to a degree. It starts off kind of crappy with the 6 games at the beginning, but that's not bad. This isn't a bad schedule as far as I'm concerned. This is a lot better than some of the ones we've seen in the past where they'll go from playing in Vancouver one night to Philadelphia like 2 nights later, and then like Vancouver again, like not like 3 days after that sort of thing. Like I would argue that this is a better schedule the Canucks have gotten than in recent memory.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just gonna say, I agree.
Yeah, I realize I should have put it in our notes.
Yeah, wasn't expecting this at all, but I'm gonna say, okay.
Yeah,
sure.
you just nod your head slowly. Yeah. That's all you got to do. It's looking not too badly. It's looking not too bad this time around.
As we wind down our show, let's end on some happiness. The top 5 of the season, a season of lows mostly, but there were some highs. So let's please, your top 5, or at least some of the 5.
Some of the 5, because you know what, like this season has been a bit of a bummer in many cases, but
just a bit.
But there have been some good parts of it, and you know what, immediately when I started making this list, the first thing that came to my head was Nils Hoeklander, because I think a lot of this season had to do with him.
If he wasn't on the team, this would have been fucking unwatchable.
This could have been like much harder to enjoy. Nils Hoeklander was a great season was a great part of this year for a lot of reasons. Number one being that first NHL goal, first game of the season, starts off well. And Jeff Merrick, I think on the intermission being like, Vancouver, you got another one. Like that's unreal.
That's a good call.
That's a good call. Like, that's so cool. And then, I believe Harner Ryan Singh had the call on that goal, like the play-by-play. Hand out the sweets it was a cool moment. It was a really cool moment for him. You got Jack Rathbone scoring a lot later into the year. His first NHL goal. It was like the rookies made the season watchable hockey. You're right. Like, that was the perfect way of putting it. Without them, it would have been very hard to find positives to glean out of this season. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that Nils Hoeklander had an incredible year, had an incredible rookie season for a guy, I believe the first in his draft class to make it to the NHL and then play as well as he did. He was on many nights the best Canuck on the ice. And he was a fantastic part of this year.
I didn't really have much to add to the list because the season for me was unwatchable garbage. But I did enjoy clowning on Barstool when they stole a video of mine. That's a pretty big highlight, personally.
That was a funny moment. So so Mr. Booth, who is back, by the way, Mr. Booth.
Yes, he is.
He is back. He is back and bringing the hits again. I think he was the one who told you, right, that they were using your video, that they'd copy your video, and it even says like from Cody Sievertson on the bottom.
Yeah.
And so
and then somehow he took all the heat from them, which is fucking hysterical.
Really funny. Yeah, it's super funny.
Good stuff.
Yeah, they're those people over at Pub Chair are very interesting. Very, very interesting fellows. Somehow
that's definitely
funny.
That's definitely an adjective to use to describe them.
Yeah, they're definitely, out of all the people on in the hockey landscape, they're definitely some of them, and I mean that. I mean that in every way.
That's the biggest compliment you can give them.
Yeah, they are definitely some of those people that exist. So I mentioned Hoeklander. Like, I mentioned it, like, just like the first goal and everything, and then like his season as well. Like, there's the whole. I think a lot of what also made his season special is just like the whole thing, like, where people were really getting behind him from like on hockey Twitter, because this year was tough for fan engagement, especially because no one could go to the games, no one could be there. And yet we got a couple cool moments out of it, like the way that, people really rallied around the idea that, hey, we're going to use Hoeklander. Hoeklander spells his name with an umlaut over the O, which is technically a different letter. It is not the same as a regular O. We're going to spell that correctly. Like, I have it built into my computer and my phone now that I spell it with the umlaut automatically. Like, it just does it. It fills it in for me. And I think that's a part of a thing we're going to see, a trend we're going to see at the NHL going forward, is just always we're gonna see players get more of a say on, hey, I want my name spelled correctly. Lafreniere was another guy who wanted to make sure he had the apostrophe, or I believe it, I guess like the apostrophe over the letters in his name. Tim Stutzla was another guy who got his umlauts. I believe there are some other players.
Sven Berchi got his at the AHL level. That was
Sven Berchi got his. Jacob Markstrom, maybe next year will get his. I believe he has a few as well. Like, I believe he has one. There are other players, and you hope that that's a trend going forward, that you'll see players getting their names spelled accurately to what they are. I understand, like, to a certain, like, you understand obviously that, maybe you won't necessarily see Russian players getting their names spelled with the Russian alphabet. Like, you understand
that would be so fucking cool.
It would look very cool, 100%. But you understand, like, for broadcasting and media reasons, why they would need to have the English versions on them. Yeah. Nonetheless, you hope that they at least give them opportunities to spell them, though. That way, like, we mentioned Ethan Bear, as I believe at one point, like how he spelt his name in Cree on his jersey.
He had the Cree syllabics on his, which is rad. Maybe Brady Keeper will look into that when he's here.
And maybe they can't
know.
do that, and maybe they can't do that every night. Maybe you can't do that every night, but you hope that they give them opportunities to do it at some point and do it on at least for some special occasions and get to wear them in a proper NHL game, because that would be incredible. I know Ethan Bear got to wear his in I believe a preseason game last year, or in an exhibition of some kind. You hope that it becomes a mainstay, though, that it becomes a more regular occurrence and it doesn't become like a novelty. It's just kind of part of the fabric of the game. For sure. Down the line.
Other than that, there was also jinxing Colorado. That was really funny. Saying they're never going to lose another game, and then they went on to lose 4 straight.
Teams. Yeah, Cody, the curse Severson.
That was good to find out that I wield such oppressive power. So that's good to know for next season.
So it's your fault the Canucks haven't won, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
That's Jimmy's. That's Jimmy J's.
Fire Cody. That's the new hashtag. We're going to see a banner flying over.
Put that on a banner. Oh, yeah. The banner was very fun.
I forgot about the banner. It's one of those.
The timing was so bad and so stupid, but the banner just in general existing is very funny.
Oops. Yeah.
Joining this podcast and having a reason to talk hockey. But yeah. Otherwise, in a season full of miserable shit, we got some good highs out of this, some good laughs, and we're looking forward to covering
Project this year.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a huge one. Fact that
how was that not the first thing you mentioned?
Because I didn't want to just make it all about me right at the beginning.
That's literally what the whole point is.
I mean, it's a bit about everything. There was, the Botcher Project night was incredible. I will never forget you throwing me the party from your room that this is the Botcher Project night. That was incredible.
I just threw out the palm tree that I had set up.
That was wild. That was incredible. And then getting to meet other writers and actually getting to interact with people.
Actually, I was gonna say actually seeing people.
Actually seeing people, getting to meet Arash and Clarissa, and getting to getting to see Faber and Quads after I hadn't seen them in person in over a year. Is just incredible. And then, getting to meet some writers who I've looked up to for a very long time, like Jeff Patterson and Thomas Drance, getting to meet Daniel Wagner. I'd never met Wags before that night. That was the first time I think I got to meet him in person. It was really cool. So many people have made that such an amazing night, and just getting to do that, getting to be one of the few people who saw hockey in person this year was just ridiculously special and fun, and I will treasure that memory for the rest of my life, and hopefully it leads us to bigger and better things going forward. And then, you know what, even that kind of comes back to the fact that, hey, had you not joined, who knows if I'd even have gotten that opportunity, just in terms of having your expertise and being
I'm pretty sure you would have got there anywhere, buddy.
I like to believe so, but you know what, this year was going to be tough no matter what, but I think it was made a lot less tougher that I brought you into the show. That was the best decision.
That was the only reason why I was brought on the show, was to help you angle for a Botcher Project selection.
My campaign manager. No. I brought Cody on because, the CreaseCast.
Oh, we don't need to rehash that.
We do. You know what we do? Because I want to give you your due here, my guy. The CreaseCast I'd done all I could with the CreaseCast on my own. There was not much I could do to really improve the show and make it any better than I was doing by myself. I was doing what I could, but I knew it was never going to be able to take the next step without somebody else there. And I really wanted somebody to bring in somebody good for it. And Cody was the third guy I called. No, I'm just kidding. He was the very first one. He was the first. He was the only one to answer. Everyone else left me on red. Cody had nothing better to do. No, this was.
If anyone's watching this on our YouTube channel, you'll have seen my face through that entire speech of Lachlan's, which is very polite. But I'm watching the Olympic swimming on the other screen here.
Wow!
And the water is so disgusting. It is like they're swimming in sewage.
Oh my God.
You're seeing them swim. It's I don't know. I guess it's like a marathon or whatever, a triathlon. But they're
it's like triathlon. I see.
So they're in the river, and it's just brown like coffee water. It's so gross looking. Anyway, check out our YouTube channel. You can see everything in the YouTube format, and you can see my disgusted reaction, even though I should have been reacting with smiles at the very nice things Lachlan is saying.
I expected tears. I expect tears. Cody did such a great job this year. I literally thrust host on him after episode 1. I was like, hey, you're going to be the host now. And that was a lot to ask of a guy who not only had never had his own podcast before this, but also, wasn't used to necessarily like, here, not only am I giving you homework to come in every Tuesday and every Friday, while you're also doing your Utica Comets coverage and doing all of that and more for the show. Also having you host it and actually keep it on the rails every single week is a lot to ask of you. And you came in, you made the show your own as well as just as much as it is mine. And looking into next year, I'm looking very much forward to not only getting to do a proper full 82 game season with you, but also, just seeing how far this takes us. Like this could be, who knows how long we'll be doing this for. But right now the times we're getting, these have been as I mentioned many times before, doing the CreaseCast during this pandemic and everything that's been going on with it has been the best part of my week. And it's easily the thing I look forward to the most on Tuesday every week is just doing this with you. So thank you for that, my guy.
Well, it sounds like a really bad time to be like, this is my last episode I'm ever going to do of the CreaseCast.
Yeah, I'm firing him.
Thanks everybody for listening. I'm outie.
He'll be back. And as will we. We'll be back.
If the Canucks are as shit as they were this season, as they are, like, if they're as bad as they were this season as they are next season, I'm probably just going to stop I'm going to fuck off. I can't write and track stats for a team that just does not give a shit or even try to win. I don't have the patience for that. I'll find a new hobby.
Well, the good news is the Abbotsford Canucks look like they might actually be a Calder Cup contender this season.
This is true.
You'll be fine. You might be fine. You're going to get some good opportunities next year, and I look forward to being there while you do them. It's going to be pretty cool.
That's the jinx of a lifetime. But
no, I'm not.
Knock on some wood, because that's some bad signs there. If you enjoyed this finale, it won't be our grand finale, but it is a finale for this last season. Thank you so much to the listeners for actually listening to us ramble on for close to an hour and a half or more every single time. That takes some commitment, and we appreciate you guys for listening to us, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, whatever you're tuning into us on. First off, why aren't you rating us 5 stars or giving us reviews? Like, are we chop liver to you? Like, what the fuck?
We really appreciate it.
We do this for you guys. The least you could do is drop us a little review. So honestly,
into the listeners right out of the gate. God, we want them to come back for season 3. We want them.
I don't know if we do, because they don't review our stuff. So why do we want them to stick around if they don't care about us the way we care about them? Man. If maybe reviewing or hitting 5 stars or writing hey, I like this show, if that's too much to ask, well, don't worry. We've also got a Patreon where we have $1 and $5 tiers, where if you don't feel like, just writing a little review saying what you liked about our show, you can just support us indirectly and directly by, showing us some love.
Yeah.
$1 here and there, that helps, fuel Lachlan's gas tank to drive back to Canada once his car is ready. But otherwise,
we got not only do you also get some bonus podcasts from us.
Oh yeah, you do get some stuff out of it. But
you get incentives.
You do get things.
Incentives to giving us money.
There are reasons to do it. Yes.
Yeah, we have that, and for the next. So here's one thing we should mention. Like this, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break from the regular shows for a bit, at least until the end of August. We won't be doing another one of these regular shows, but you will get us from Off the Post from time to time during that time on our Patreon, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast. So you'll be getting us there. And then once we do come back in September, we will be starting off with only 1 episode a week up until the regular season, when we'll go back to our regular 2.
Yeah. Until then, folks, you can follow me at Cody Sievertson on Twitter or my website, cometsharvest.com. Soon to be A-Nucksharvest.com. Thank you, Lachlan, for that one. Where can they find you before I steal your handle as well?
I'm running to the trademark office as we speak. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You can find my writing at lachandthecrease.com. And you might find me on some other places sooner than you think. Might be coming. I might have things cooking that are worth.
There might be things in the works.
Keeping an eye out on those social media platforms for you to find out. We got that next. I'll say this: next season is going to be. We're going to make it way more fun. I promise. It's going to be way more fun. Way more wild. And thank you for listening to this season of the CreaseCast.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. We'll be back. Have a good summer.
H.A.G.S.